two fights in the UFC featherweight division just got announced, and people have some questions, and I'm going to do my best to answer some of those questions, and just give my feelings on them. Obviously, those two fights are Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez 2, the rematch for the belt, and Evloev versus Aaron Pico. I'm guessing it's a title eliminator. So we'll get right into the first fight. I just want to say that there's a lot of misinformation about this fight so far that I kind of want to break down. First of all, this fight is not confirmed yet. There's been no official sources that have claimed this. I've seen Championship Rounds, I think was the first account I saw a tweet about it. I saw a couple semi-official insiders say, there's talks of the fight, but no one yet officially confirming it. Now I'm going to post this as I'm recording this. It is midnight. Just turned Saturday. It was just Friday, 15 minutes ago. And I'm going to post this in about 12 hours, so at about noon on Saturday. Maybe a little later because the Rizin event is tonight and I'll be staying up. It could be confirmed by then, but why I think it might not be 100% true, a couple things. One, I did see that, the arena in Guadalajara. Everyone's talking about this fight being at UFC 320 in Guadalajara, Mexico. And I saw a thread on Twitter yesterday, the day before, from Big Marcel, or at least he was reposting it or replying to it, talking about how Arena Guadalajara, where the event was going to be, is talking about pulling out and they're canceling some events around the time of September when the fight's supposed to be. Which, it's not confirmed that it's going to be in Guadalajara. Basically, all the information we have on that is Dana said he wants to go to Guadalajara for a pay-per-view. We're talking about going to Guadalajara for a pay-per-view. So it's not confirmed we're even going there. It's just Dana said he wants to. And also, this also could be false, but I saw that someone on Twitter said Volkanovski is expecting another child in September, and he didn't want to fight in September, which is when UFC 320 is going to be, which is when everyone is saying this fight is being made for. So if that is true, I could totally see, if the truth is that he's having a kid, I could totally see him not wanting to fight in September, and we would rather wait till October, November, or have the fight before then even. So I don't know. It makes the claims a little more suspicious, especially because we haven't seen any confirmed insiders, or not even insiders, just the UFC or someone official announcing the fight. So that's why I'm a little suspicious of it. But as for the booking of the fight, obviously it is super confusing. In my opinion, I want to. This will be an entertaining fight, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to it. It's exciting. This is going to be kind of a hot take, but I think Yair is one of the only guys in the division I could see easily, or not easily, but possibly beating or plausibly beating. What's his name? Volkanovski. And the reason why is because if you think about who else is at the top of the division, you've got Evloev, obviously. I don't think he's skilled enough to beat Volkanovski. If you're picking Evloev to beat Volkanovski, you're kind of saying of Evloev is a better grappler than Islam, and I just definitely don't think that's true. Evloev doesn't really have the finishing potential of all the people who have beaten Volkanovski. And I don't really think he's going to beat him in a decision because they don't think he's skilled as Islam, who took Volk to a very, very close decision just a couple of years ago. Lerone Murphy's also at the top of the division. Kind of the same thing, doesn't have super good finishing potential. Probably not as skilled as Volk, who's one of the more skilled fighters ever in the UFC. I'm trying to think who else at the top of the division. I mean, you still have Diego Lopez, who we just saw him lose to. We just saw Diego Lopez lose to Volkanovski. You've still got Ortega, who's lost. You got Holloway, who's lost to Volkanovski 3 times. You've got, that's kind of Arnold Allen. It's kind of a similar thing. He doesn't have crazy finishing potential. I don't think he's as skilled as Volkanovski. And Yair is the only guy at the top of the division who we know isn't as skilled as Volk, but has the finishing potential and the dynamicism in his striking to potentially beat him. That's why I picked Ortega against Pitbull when they fought their fight. And we'll get into that in a second, but the finishing potential, the dynamicism, that's how you beat Volkanovski. That's how Yair took the first 2 rounds off Volkanovski. Throwing a switch head kick is how Islam finished Volkanovski. Using, and just having good finishing ability is how Ilya finished him. So if you're going to beat Volkanovski, Yair's not like the worst guy in the division to do it. I think he's probably one of the better ones. So if you're going based on that ability to beat the champion as, merit for getting a title shot, it makes me think that the UFC doesn't want Volkanovski to have the belt. And I kind of get that because he's old and we've already seen the title run. But Volkanovski, obviously a way bigger name than Yair. Probably a bigger name than everyone in the division but Holloway and Topuria, if that. So I don't really get the booking. If I had to give my best theory for why Yair got a title shot, I would guess this. I was listening to a podcast a couple days ago. I think it was either the Mighty Cast or it was, what's it called? The Jackson podcast. And someone was talking about how UFC fighters, fighters outside of the UFC, when they sign to the UFC, especially bigger names like Pitbull and like Asakura and Prohaska, when these guys get signed to the UFC doesn't pay as good money to these names, or to these like kind of, almost names as, promotions outside the UFC do. So I'm sure Pitbull got paid more in Bellator and PFL and, in the rizin co-promoted events than he did in his UFC debut. But they're given the prospect of, a title eliminator or a big name, like MVP fought Kevin Holland in his first fight, then Ian Gary, a prospect on the rise, and then Chara Bullet. So I think that's what it was with the Pitbull fight. I think Pitbull probably got offered a title eliminator for his debut because the UFC wasn't willing to pay him what Bellator was paying him, and the UFC just wanted to take that name away from Bellator, or from PFL. And when they were negotiating a fight with him between Yair or whoever they were going to, originally book the fight with, anyone that wanted to book the fight with Pitbull was like, this guy's getting a title shot for beating me. I got to get a title shot if you beat him. And at the time, I'm trying to think, I don't think Evloev hasn't fought since then. So if I had to guess, they probably we don't have a super clear title contender. Pitbull, if he wins, that'd be, a decently big name who can get a title shot. We can promote that as, UFC versus Bellator. And then if Yair wins, whatever, we're doing a Guadalajara event later in the year, and we have a name for that, if worse comes to worst. And I think that's what happened. I think they were originally trying to, if I had to guess, they were probably trying to have Pitbull fight just anyone in the top of featherweight. And they knew that Pitbull wanted a title shot or a title eliminator if he wanted to come to UFC. And they were like, who do we want to give a title eliminator to if they beat Pitbull? And it's like, we don't want Evloev because, the UFC clearly doesn't like Evloev. They're giving him Aaron Pico instead of a title shot. He's undefeated in the UFC, but he's got, I think, only one finish, or if not none. Hasn't looked super good. I had a couple of controversial decisions this past few. So I think they didn't want to give Evloev a title shot. And they're like, if we got to give someone at the top of 145 a title shot if they beat Pitbull, we got to give it, or we can try to give it to Yair because we know that there's the Guadalajara event later in the year that we can, book him for. So that's my best guess for why they made this fight. I think it's a total waste of the drama from the UFC 13 or whatever card Volkanovski Lopez was. Was that 14? It wasn't that long ago. There was a lot of drama for them between the two of them at the press conference. Yair's Mexican. Ortega is, flies a Mexican flag. He, walks out to a Mexican song. Fought at UFC Noche. I feel like that's the perfect fight for Guadalajara. And then they can do just probably like Pantoja versus someone and a women's title fight. Just put two shitty title fights at the top. Load the rest of the main card with big Mexican names, and that you got a card there. But instead, I think they took the wrong gamble. Wanted Pitbull to win or something like that, and now they're looking down the barrel of Yair having a rematch. But then again, it's not confirmed. So that's what I want to say about that card. That fight. All I want to say about the Pico Evloev fight, Evloev is getting screwed. I think everyone can agree. 9-0 in the UFC. I know he hasn't been the most exciting. I know he's got a couple, robberies under his belt, in my opinion. But I think this Aaron Pico fight is kind of a screw job. I don't really think Aaron Pico is all that. I've watched a couple of his fights in Bellator. Does he have any fights under PFL? Let me check real quick. He does. He has one. He beat Henry Corrales in PFL as a minus 500 favorite. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not super high on him. Obviously, he's looked pretty good recently. His only loss since 2019 has been was an injury. So against Jeremy Kennedy, who fought Volkanovski, he was a pretty good fighter in the UFC. Went to Bellator, had a pretty decent career. So I don't hate his resume. I don't think he's a bad fighter. I think most people would agree he's probably, if you do the MMA math, if you do the MMA algebra, he's probably not at the top of the contenders in the UFC. If it had nothing to do with negotiating and it was just fighters at similar levels fighting fighters at similar levels, we'd more realistically see him fighting Dan Ige or Sean Woodson or someone like that, right outside the rankings, or just inside, between 12 and 15, something like that. But I think because, like I said before, the UFC can't negotiate just with money because they don't like to pay their fighters. They have to, give them like a chip in the negotiation. And I think that Aaron Pico's was, you get to fight Evloev. He's a big name Dagestani. If you beat him, you get a title shot. And fortunately for Evloev, I'm sure he's got the same deal as Yair. If my theory is true, that if he wins this fight, he gets a title shot. But yeah, I mean, I really don't see what Yair does for Volkanovski's legacy or resume. I think a lot of people, I mean, if Yair wins this, they're going to do the trilogy. So, I mean, Evloev can get totally screwed here. One, he can lose to Aaron Pico, who's a big puncher, has good finishing potential, decent fighter. We don't really know how good he is. We don't know what his ceiling is yet, compared to the UFC talent. And if Yair wins this fight, they're going to make the trilogy, which means he's going to be out of a title shot for another year. So, I don't know. Also, if Yair wins, it's going to be a finish, and Volk's probably going to want to take a lot of time off if he gets finished, if he doesn't retire. So Volk can take a year off. That fight's not for another 4 months or 5 months or whatever. So it could be 5 months, Volkanovski gets knocked out, another year, and then you got to wait an entire, assuming Volkanovski wins again or Yair wins again, an entire recovery, promotion, training camp cycle. That could be another 2 years before Evloev gets a title shot, if things go, not his way, even if he beats Aaron Pico. So really mismanaged by the UFC in my opinion. I'm still looking forward to the fight. It just, I think everyone can agree that Evloev is so much better for Volkanovski's legacy than Yair, a rematch especially. So, yeah. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'm going to watch the Rizin fight tonight. I'm thinking about making a recap of, this week's fights because there's actually a lot of stuff going on outside of the UFC. And I don't have a lot to talk about inside the UFC other than this. Road to UFC has been good. The one event this morning was good. Decent Rizin card looking forward to. Actually, it's not that good of a card, but yeah. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my take on this card. I'm really conflicted about posting this tonight versus tomorrow. I guess you'll see, but if I post it tonight, no one's going to watch it. If I post it tomorrow, the news might be, obsolete or out of the news cycle. So, yeah, thanks for listening. Subscribe, watch my previous videos. All of my previous videos are predictions for the UFC cards this year. If you want to see my takes, go watch those. Like the video, share the video. That is all. Again, thank you for listening.